You are listening to Inspired Caring with Michelle Magner, episode number 104. Hello, welcome to Inspired Caring. I'm your host, Michelle Magner. If you are caring for an older family member, this is the podcast for you. Each week, I bring insight, tips, inspiration, and strategies to help you care for the people that you love without losing yourself along the way. Having cared for both of my grandmothers, I've helped manage everything from hospital stays, households full of belongings, to navigating senior living and end-of-life care. And I've worked in senior living as a result of that experience, serving my residents and their families as they've been on this journey too. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy this episode of Inspired Caring. Hello, how are you doing? I hope you are doing great. It is so beautiful. I know it gets annoying, I think, to hear everybody talking about the weather. You can't impact it, affect it, change it, but we're just having really wonderful, beautiful summer days. And I'm enjoying them. I love summer. I love sweating. We have a very, very fluffy doggie, and she is a little bit less of a fan. But we are moving along. Today, I want to talk about boundaries. I think I've done another episode on boundaries, and this was like a huge revelation that I had this week. I went to a retreat last weekend in South Lake Tahoe. So beautiful, such a beautiful part of the country, and just an incredible group of human beings are part of this group that I'm in. And I really had this revelation, so I wanted to share it with you. Really, just the very idea of a boundary or having to say a boundary feels uncomfortable. Just the word ignites this feeling of, ugh, or a sigh, or even a sob sometimes, just the word boundary. And it was recently introduced to me this idea that boundaries are meant to be temporary. They are put into place when agreements aren't met. And we had this incredible energy practitioner, Dr. Aaron, he's in Denver, Colorado, come to our retreat and work with each one of us. And it was just so powerful when I heard him say that. It really shifted something in me. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, they're meant to be temporary. Because you and someone are having an encounter or some sort of interaction that is upsetting, right? And maybe even when you're not around that person, it's still triggering you and something in your mind. Just even when you think about them, there's like a boundary issue there, because they're living rent free in our mind because of a lack of a boundary, a boundary being needed to have in place with ourselves in relation to that person, if that makes sense. So there's clearly physical boundaries, like don't touch me anymore, don't touch me like that. Some people are not huggers. Physical boundaries are just really, really important. It's important to honor physical boundaries. I feel like we get a little bit more caught up in some of these emotional boundaries, especially when we're on this caregiving journey, trying to help other people and maybe other family members involved. So the idea that it could be temporary was very new to me. And then it totally made sense. Like, why wouldn't a boundary be temporary, especially if we're talking about a specific person? And then it hit me because what happens when a boundary is put into place and when the boundary is held with ourself or with someone else, it just becomes like a habit or a process or part of our own personal operating manual for ourselves. And if we put something into place with someone else, I think there are three things that may happen that I'm going to elaborate on. But so a boundary with yourself is one you obviously have to enforce, right? With other people, the boundary is set up, and if it's practiced a couple times or a few times, I feel like there's a few things that can happen. The first thing is that the person might actually change their behavior. Now, we cannot operate or count on this premise that this is going to happen because other people get to do what they're going to do. Adults get to make their own decisions, they get to process the way they process. Hopefully I say hopefully because I believe this, hopefully they're on a journey of discovery and exploration and development, but maybe they're not. So you put a boundary in place. There is a chance that someone may process that boundary and actually make a change because you're showing them a new way to treat you. And there's that second chance that over time, I don't know about second chance over time, but there's just a chance that with that reinforcement that someone maybe will stop asking for something or doing something or responding in a certain way because you have held a boundary and shown them a certain way that you want to be treated. They've realized that you have the boundary. So they may want to stop feeling that feeling of discomfort about the boundary with when you're enforcing it and holding it. So that's option one is you put the boundary in place, you're practicing the boundary, you're holding it up. There is a chance that maybe you're showing them this new way of interacting with you and they will respond in a way that you're hoping. And it's uncomfortable for you and it's uncomfortable for them to have this boundary in place. So it's sort of like a game of chicken, discomfort chicken. I don't think fried chicken manufacturers would pick up on that because fried chicken is comfort food, but discomfort, it's a game of discomfort chicken. Who's going to flinch first? If it's you that lightens up on that boundary, it's going to be at your expense and it's going to cause you more harm than them because you're the one who set that boundary in either a reflective moment using your prefrontal cortex, or maybe it was in an instant when it was grating against your values and you knew it was a no-go, whatever it is. So everybody's uncomfortable. And if you flinch and break your boundary, they'll go back to feeling better because now you're meeting an old expectation and pattern of behavior. But that leaves you feeling pretty crummy, right? If it's them who flinches first, you're both going to be uncomfortable, right? Because a boundary has been set, this is new territory. But the idea here is that it will be temporary, sort of like touching a hot stove, because and your body and mind may become confused with what to do with this new information because maybe you've never held a boundary before and you've never felt this level or type of discomfort before. And there's potential that they're going to throw in, or your own brain will throw in some guilt just to add to the confusion, add some second guessing in there, like a little sprinkle of that. But this is where the magic can happen. Because over time, if you're holding the boundary, they could become less interested in getting burned by the hot stove. Does that make sense? So you're playing this game of chicken with your boundary and it's uncomfortable and you're holding it. They may flinch first. They may back off because they don't want to feel uncomfortable. And yeah, maybe they're going to say, you've changed. And maybe they're going to try and slather on something else and make you feel bad about it or bring up something from the past. But the reality is you've grown, you're not stuck in the same pattern of behavior, and you have changed. So by holding your own space, your own energy and boundary, eventually there's a force that will shift in how they are showing up. A lot like when the wind changes or the rudder on a boat, like inevitably things are going to be taken in a different direction. And here's the thing when you implement a boundary, and you're growing, your energetic vibration rises. You're just operating in a different field. So the other thing that may happen is that if you set up a boundary and you change the rules of engagement, they may not have enough oxygen for the climb. Michelle Obama talked about this after she moved into the White House. She said some of her friends didn't make the cut. Like they just couldn't handle it and they didn't have enough oxygen for the climb. So when you instill and hold a boundary, someone else may decide it's just not worth it and they may go away. They may ultimately go away depending on the person and the situation. And I'm 100% not saying that our goal in life should be to live like the dude from the Wild movie, like he was living on alone on a mountain in an abandoned bus. But what I'm saying is, what I'm observing and uncovering is that for each person in my life that has slipped away because of a boundary that I have held, I've opened myself up to someone else who is an incredible human and that is more of a match for me. Someone who is more aligned energetically and takes less work for me to be around. Like, are you hearing me? There are people out there that take more of your time, attention, and effort, and they are so much harder to be around. And you get a choice. So, in that game of chicken, there's potential the other person is going to fade out. Like, they're going to be tired of dealing with me and my bullshit boundary, and they will just disappear. And that is okay. Because what that means is that there's new space to sink back into this new version of myself who no longer stands for being spoken to a certain way or treated a certain way, or I have moved somebody out of my brain who has been living in there rent free. And I don't know maybe exactly what better looks like yet, but I'm just really open to the fact that something could be different. And that's all it takes with boundaries. And after maintaining a boundary for a period of time, which may only be once, maybe it's only one time and you're like, that's it, I'm done. Maybe it takes a little bit of time, but maybe over a period of time you decide you're done and you're going to choose something different. So maybe you fade out, right? Maybe I'm the one that's fading out or cutting back because I decide this is not an energetic match. And so I stop participating in the dance. I stop responding and continuing in a way that requires a boundary to be there that maybe somebody else has implemented or is putting with me. And that's okay. Boundaries are meant to be temporary. They're put into place for agreements that are not being met. Sometimes we actually vocalize these agreements and sometimes we don't. Sometimes they're meta. They're like under the radar. So, I mean, you can see that maybe it can be challenging to identify what a boundary needs to be. And it can be tiresome to initially put something into place, but it's meant to be a short-term solution to gain a long-term result. Where ultimately it's no longer needed because either there's lasting change with the situation or the person, or with myself involved. It's stuck. We have a lasting change. So holding boundaries with ourselves, I think, can be the toughest because it really requires that pay attention part. I talk a lot about wake up, paying attention, and choosing. And there may not be an immediate triggering response to something that requires me to analyze and set up a boundary. Maybe there's like more of a lackadaisical, I don't even know if that's a word, situation where things are kind of bending and there's lines in the sand, but they're bleeding, and then we're just off track, and then things can get way off track. But knowing what you need is really important, and it's just a critical part of this equation. Know what you want, know what works for you, and figure out how to gently or not so gently remind yourself of the boundaries that you need, either with yourself or with someone else, until something becomes a habit. You are accountable and responsible for yourself. No one else is to blame. Okay? So my boundaries are my boundaries for myself, for my greater good, and you have them too. They're just so challenging to uphold, I know, because we want to be nice and we want to be helpful and we want to be seen and we want to be valued. But as I dial them in, as I dial in my boundaries and I practice them over and over, it really, you stop thinking about them because either the thing has become second nature or the situation has just changed. And they're just part of me, right? They're part of who I am. And I feel like that Saturday Night Live skit. Gosh darn it, I like me, that guy looking in the mirror. So just think through what your boundaries are, who you need to have boundaries with, what do they look like, and be open to the idea that it's temporary and the discomfort from setting and holding a boundary is going to be temporary. Something is going to give, something is going to crack. And I love you and I see you, and keep up the great work. You're doing a great job.